Okay, can everyone hear me okay? All right, cool. Hi, I'm talking tonight about what it's like being physically disabled in America. And now I'm kind of doing a general overview. I'm trying not to get too personal because I'm trying to do what it's like for someone that's typically physically disabled. As far as, like my bullet points isn't going to be like transportation, housing, the process to acquire medical equipment, or doing even medical services. So I will try to be as thorough and prompt as I can. And if you have questions, I will be happy to answer. Don't shy away. And so here we go. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, for one, it's Disability Awareness Month. The whole month of October is. And for another, it's also Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. Yay! And in case you're wondering, that is the disability I have, cerebral palsy. A little bit of background about me. I am 33 years old. I live in Oklahoma. If you don't know where that is, grab a US map and look for the state that looks like a cooking pot. And I live in the dead center of that state. That's pretty much it. I'm married with one kid and currently basically riding out COVID. Okay, first and foremost, what is cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy, in a nutshell, is a neurological disorder caused by brain injury, usually happens either during the birthing process, in utero, or shortly after the birthing process. And also it can and sometimes happens if you sustain an illness such as bacterial meningitis. If you don't die from it, you will be left with this disability. And in a nutshell, what this disability does is the messages that are sent from your brain to the rest of your body on how to function either misfire or they get scrambled along the way. For instance, you may tell your arm to straighten out. It might do it, it might not. That's in a nutshell, cerebral palsy. My next thing is the process of obtaining medical equipment. At least here in the US, it may be different for our friends in Europe, but as of here and now, this is how we have to go through it. For instance, if you need a wheelchair, the first thing you have to do, sadly enough, is you have to call your insurance provider. And you have to, A, see if you're eligible to even get one, and B, whether or not they will cover the cost of getting one. And if the insurance company says yes, you go to your doctor, you obtain a prescription for it, and then you go to something called a seating clinic, which is you go to a physical therapist and they evaluate you for a wheelchair and what would fit your needs. And they do basic stuff like, take your height, your weight, and what your physical limitations are and what you would actually need as far as a chair. Here's the caveat though. With that, they look at what chair you would need for inside your home. Nothing outside of the home qualifies. So for instance, if you work and you need something transportable, your insurance company may not cover that. You may have to cover that cost yourself. Once all of that is said and done, and you find a medical supply company that takes your insurance, you have to sit and wait for roughly 6 to 12 weeks to actually get your new equipment. Now, thankfully, if the equipment needs repaired, you go through a similar process, but not as many steps. You still have to get a prescription from your doctor. Yes, I know it makes no sense whatsoever to have a prescription to get a wheelchair repaired. But this is how our medical system works in the US. You call the repair company, or you call the same company you purchased the chair through. The same supply company, they usually come out and do repairs and services as well. A lot of them do. They have to notify your insurance company and cross your fingers and hope the insurance company covers it, or it's under warranty. Otherwise, you may be paying for repairs out of your own pocket. That's another thing. Insurance, if you don't know, if you realize, insurance for somebody that's physically disabled or just disabled in general plays a big factor. As of 2000 and I do believe 12, they get to dictate every aspect of our life. What medical services we get, what equipment we can get. It's a big, thorn in the side. Because you may need something like physical therapy, but the insurance company goes, no. And also the same thing with doctors. You may know a doctor that's absolutely wonderful, has experience working with somebody that, works with, for instance, people with cerebral palsy. You want to go to that doctor. Insurance company could say, no, we're not going to pay for that. So, yeah, at least in the U.S., the disabled are completely at the mercy of the insurance companies right now. And just for posterity's sake, in case you're wondering why I keep rambling on and on and on and on and on about insurance and what's the big deal, here's the typical cost of wheelchairs. Low end would be like the little scooters that you'd see at the grocery store. And the high end would be the ones that can actually have hydraulics and tilt and, lift up and stuff. Those are the maximum height end range. Mid-range is what you would typically see somebody in, and they start at 6,000 and go between 6 to about 15,000 US dollars. This is why I ramble on about insurance, because if the insurance isn't willing to pay, this is what you have to pay out of pocket. And this is just for wheelchairs. It gets even more interesting when you're talking about other medical devices, but for now I'm just going to stick with wheelchairs, because if I went into detail about others, we'd be here until next Christmas. My next slide will be transportation and how most people get around. Okay, you have several options when it comes to transportation. You can either get your own modified vehicle, which I have numbers right there. They can either come modified or think a standard price of a vehicle and then add the pricing you see there, the $25,000 to $30,000 range. And yes, I said thousand, as in 1,000 US. That's to modify for a passenger vehicle only. That is not for driving adaptation. That is just if you want a passenger to be a passenger in a wheelchair-equipped van. To be a driver, it's even more expensive. To get one of these vehicles, it's not covered by medical insurance. So again, completely out-of-pocket expense. You would have to, what most of my friends have done is they buy a minivan outright, or they buy a minivan, get on a payment plan with the dealership, and then go in and have the minivan modified. So they think a standard cost of a minivan is about 30,000 US starting, and then you add another 30,000 to modify. And when I mean modify, is they go in, they take out the back seats, and they put down an anchoring system in the back. And either, depending on what you want to spend, they either put in a lift system or they put in a ramp system. And you're very limited. They will not modify a car for obvious reasons. Well, they'll modify a car if you want like driving adaptation, but not for passenger. But they prefer to modify minivans, and sometimes they will modify pickup trucks. Your next option for transportation, other than relying on family, is you can take, in my state, we have public transit. I will state here and now it is not the best, because this is a map of our public transit service zones. If you look at the key, it'll say what zone 1 is, zone 2, zone 3, and also the emboldened lines are the fixed bus routes. The places in white are cities that refuse to let the bus service run. I will come to defense of one of the cities. Edmond actually has their own bus system. I've used it before. It is actually better than Oklahoma City's. And in case you're wondering, in the dead center is Oklahoma City. And if you look, there is Dell City, and there is Midwest City, there is Mustang, Moore. And in case you're wondering, I grew up in the city that is at the far bottom of the map. That is completely white. That's right, I grew up in a town that had no buses. And yes, if you notice, there is fare pricing, and it says that is a per one-way trip. So to do a round trip, take the number, double it, and you have what you'd have to do for a round trip. And that's per trip. So I can't just do typical errand running like everyone else, as if I want to use paratransit. And oh yes, with paratransit, they are not allowed to medically intervene. If you start having a medical issue, they have to pull over immediately and call an ambulance and sit there. They cannot administer first aid, they cannot administer CPR, they cannot administer the Heimlich maneuver. Now there's a third option I have, which is a private taxi service. They are medically trained, but it is $44 for them just to come to my house. And another $44 plus $1.25 every 2 to 5 miles, depending on where I need to go. Oh, and in case you're wondering why I couldn't get on the fixed bus routes, that would be great if Oklahoma City proper had sidewalks. They don't. If you want a sidewalk, you have to request it. So if you're a business, you request a sidewalk, and they put it in. If you were to walk around Oklahoma City, you would notice that other than downtown Oklahoma City proper, there are no sidewalks really anywhere. You may see one for maybe in front of one business, but you go next door and all you get is grass. And then you may or may not also get curb cuts as well. You also have to request the curb cuts, or they won't put them in. Yes, this is Oklahoma for you. There's a real love-hate relationship with Oklahoma. It has its good points and its bad points and its downright ugly points, but I'll get there. Okay, my next point is also, I wanted to touch on this because parking. This is a big pet peeve for me for obvious reasons. Okay, good thing Oklahoma has going for it is they require that their parking spaces be 11 feet wide, which is actually above the national standard. And I'm wondering, does anybody know why there's the striped line right next to the parking space? That is for anyone that has equipment. You can safely get them out of the vehicle and into their equipment without there being a fall risk or property damage. Believe me, I've been in situations where there's not been that striped line there, and it's been very interesting and very, very scary at times because, fall risk is there, and believe me, falling in a parking lot is never fun. I've done it. Also, they have a law in Oklahoma that is a no sign, no fine. So if the sign is not on the pole, anyone can park there. It's not designated as a handicap spot, even if there's paint on the ground. And in case you're wondering what it entails to get a handicap parking placard in my state, you go to the doctor and he fills out a form, and you give it to the Department of Public Safety, and they hand you a placard written in there. That's it. There is no you could go to any random doctor and have them fill out this form, and you get a placard. Yes, I've actually witnessed people yank up handicap parking signs, and throw them in the bushes because no sign, they can't be fined or towed. Yeah. If you get caught doing that, you will be in trouble. That being said, people in my state rarely get caught. That's why it's kind of a big deal. The next thing I was going to talk about was employment. Big thing with employment here is the ADA, you guys may not know this, but up until 1990, the disabled in the U.S. did not have rights up until 1990. When the ADA happened, it was supposed to protect us from discrimination and, all the nastiness. I'm not joking. Yeah, 1990. Yeah, so we've only had rights for 30 years. What does the ADA stand for? Americans with Disabilities Act. And the reason I bring up the ADA is to bring up this next point. The ADA says you cannot discriminate based on disability for employment. However, there is a loophole within the law, and I've seen this used many times. It protects the employer, and the magic phrase is, "We do not think we can reasonably accommodate you." This means that an employer can say this magic phrase during an interview and not get in trouble in any legal sense, because that's the magic, get out of legal trouble phrase. I don't think that the company can reasonably accommodate. There's also another phrase. If you're employed, the company you work for can also say, "Your accommodations are causing an undue hardship. We're going to have to let you go." Yes, Emma, this has actually been said to me. And per the law, they don't have to state what the undue hardship is or what an unreasonable accommodation is, because the law does not detail what is considered unreasonable, what is considered a reasonable or unreasonable accommodation, or what would be considered undue hardship. It is that vague. There is also a law that's called the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. And this is part of the law. It's in section 14-C. It states that if you are a non-profit organization, you can legally only pay a disabled employee 22 cents to $2 an hour. This law has never been amended or abolished. It is still on the books to this day, and has been utilized, and is still utilized to this day if you are a nonprofit. Yeah. So far in this country, there is only one state who has prohibited use of this law, and that is Maryland. But in all 49 states and territories in the United States, if you are disabled and work for a nonprofit and they so wish, they can and will pay you only 22 cents to $2 an hour, US currency. Now that I've gone over that, my next thing I'm touching on is housing. I will say this here and now. As I was telling Casey earlier, it's very difficult to find housing because of the equipment, especially if you're renting a property. Because in my experience, landlords are not forgiving if you accidentally scuff up a wall or maybe, take off some paint on a doorway. But the magic number for that is to comfortably maneuver around any sort of housing situation is 36 inches wide. So think your standard doorways are 36 inches wide. You need that type of width and clearance to go safely down a hallway, turn, or to go into any doorway. And also, I'm going to state for the record, throwing railing up in a bathroom does not constitute it as wheelchair accessible. I don't care what any other landlord has told me. It doesn't. It needs to be a little bit more in depth than that. And that is one reason why I've also been really fortunate that I was able to buy a house, because we were able to, and all I can say is, God bless our realtor. He actually showed up with a tape measure and measured the doorways and the hallways of every house that was in our price range, because he knew that we wouldn't buy if I couldn't get in and move around. So yes, that is a thing. And then also I wanted to debunk a few misconceptions, because some people, I don't know how it is in other countries, but here there's this big assumption that if you're disabled, you automatically get government assistance. Well, fun fact, you don't. You actually have to choose between living a semblance of a normal life or possibly, living with family and never being able to grow as a person to get the assistance, because the way it works, it's so restricted here that it's almost impossible to have the independence and get the assistance you may need. You have to choose one or the other. Basic etiquette for people that are disabled. Don't assume the individual needs help. Always ask before helping. And this may be a new one. Do not touch their equipment without permission, because in accordance with US federal law, it is actually an extension of their body. So you could possibly be charged with assault if you did something like start pushing someone in a wheelchair without their permission. If they wanted to if they really wanted to, they could have you arrested for assault. I know, because I've done it. Also, please no patronizing behavior, and what I mean by that is if you see someone disabled, do not walk up and pat them on the head and go, "Are you lost?" Yeah, that happened. Also, when you meet a disabled person, don't automatically apologize when they say, "Oh, I've been born with this my whole life," or "I had an accident," or "I got sick." Yeah, no, don't. Believe me, there are days when we give ourselves enough pay. We don't need extra. Believe me, there are days I'm just like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I wish. Yeah, it doesn't really help things. And also, the last one is don't feel obligated to include, if you've got a disabled friend, but you want to do something you know they can't physically do, you don't have to include them in everything. Such as, I had friends that wanted to go, spelunking. And I was like, cool, I'll see you when you get back. It's not going to upset me if you don't include me. If it's something like, you're going spelunking, you're going skydiving, you want to go scuba diving, I get it. I have my limitations. I know what they are. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to get mad if you don't include me in every activity. And P.S. If you invite a person with a disability to something and then you forget for 5.2 seconds that they're in a wheelchair or they're in a walker or they have a cane, they use a cane to get around and they're blind, and you legitimately honestly forget, that's okay. Most of us aren't going to be that upset about it. If anything, it'll be a good laugh. We will reg you until the end of time about it. We will reg you so hard about it till the end of time. But for the most part, we're not going to be upset about it because, believe me, there have been instances where my friends have forgotten that, they want to go to a cool restaurant and they forget that there's stairs all the way around. And they go, well, crap. If you can try to rectify the situation, that's kind of your pass. But if somebody habitually does it, then pardon my French, you're just being an ass. But all in all, that's kind of my spiel. And I'm gonna open it up for questions, comments. If you guys want to hear more, please let me know.
Well, thank you. That was super informative.
Yeah.
I know I learned some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Comments? Concerns?
Yeah.
I don't really have a question, more just horrified screaming. That is just shocking and awful.
Yeah, like I said, and by the way, that's not just here in Oklahoma, that's the entire US. That's what I gave you, apart from the a little bit of the, transportation stuff was a little bit specific to my state. I mean, most states are better than mine. My friends and I joke, my state's 20 years behind the rest of the country. So they'll eventually get there. But they'll eventually get there, but yeah, for the most part, most of this is standard, standard stuff. Especially, I know the employment stuff was a big shock. Because
I can't believe that you have a law that says you can't be discriminated against, that literally has a clause that allows them to discriminate.
Well,
with no reasons.
Because the law is so vaguely written, I know what they were trying to do, but what ended up happening was the complete opposite. Yeah, I know what they were trying to do and what they wound up doing. It's just kind of, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
You say you look something up online and they say, oh yes, this is wheelchair accessible, this, that, and the other thing, and you get there. What's the thing that you encounter the most where it's a problem? I'm sure it happens.
The biggest problem for me, and this is a hot button topic with everyone right now, bathrooms, especially going out in public. Bathrooms are a big thing because, again, you still need the clearance to get in, because the way a wheelchair user would use the restroom is a little bit different than a standard everyday person. We actually have to do a transfer from our wheelchair to the toilet. And to do that, we have to position the chair in a certain way to safely transfer, which either you physically lift yourself up with your arms, or what I do is called a pivot transfer, where I hold on to railing and then I weight bear and pivot or shift my weight to get onto the toilet. And to do that, you have to have the extra space, like I said, the 36 inches, it's kind of a universal thing, to do that safely. Otherwise, you run what's called a fall risk. And basically, you wind up, if anybody's ever in the medical field, a fall risk is basically you hit the floor and you're not getting back up. And trust me, you don't want to do that in public, because it tends to make everyone panic.
I had 2 etiquette questions, if I may.
Sure.
So the first one was just to, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I just wanted to like actually get a proper view on it. And that was your last point on the etiquette slide, was about, don't feel, you don't have to include on everything, or, etc. And you were saying about spelunking, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I'm guessing, because this is how I'd feel, that I don't want my friendship group sneaking behind my back going spelunking and feeling like they can't possibly mention it to me in case I get upset. You want them to be like upfront, like, hey, we're going spelunking, we'll send you photos. Is that, the etiquette?
Exactly. You don't have to sneak around and, go spelunking or go skydiving. Because, yes, my friends, they'll, say, hey, we're going skydiving. Cool. See what
you lunatic. What is wrong with you? Okay, bye. The plane was fine. Don't jump out of it.
Like, cool. We'll see when you get back. Don't wind up like me.
And the second question is, I have a big issue with looming over people, which isn't a big issue because I'm only 5'4", but it happens when people are seated and wheelchair users. So yeah, how does that work, etiquette-wise?
Okay, looming. Like, I'm 4'7", so can you elaborate?
Yeah, I just mean that you see some people sort of like crouch down to the level of the wheelchair user.
I probably forgot to put that in the slide, but yeah, don't do that, because it's just very unnerving. And also, I might want to excuse me because has made an appearance.
That's all right. It's 2020 Zoom bombing.
Yes, no, but that's kind of a big point of contention with me, because, in fact, I'm in a motorized wheelchair, so I'm very, I have a high center of gravity, so if you were to, like, kneel down and lean on my chair, you could actually tip it over. So there's been a few instances where I've had to, tell people, okay, you don't have to, kneel down for me to talk to you. My husband brought up a good point. He's like, you wouldn't use a step ladder to talk to Shaquille O'Neal. So why should you kneel down to a wheelchair user to talk to them? Just, look down. Trust me, we're not going to get offended. Look down and talk to us.
Of course.
And we'll look up and talk to you.
Yeah. That's fine. I was sure that's what I have been doing my whole life. I just wanted to it just occurred to me that actually I haven't actually asked anyone, and that seemed like a misstep on my part.
Oh yeah, it's like, you wouldn't do, like my husband said, if you wouldn't use a step ladder to talk to Shaquille O'Neal, why do you feel the need to kneel?
I'd probably have to use a megaphone to him though, to be fair.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or anything?
I do actually have a question now I think about it.
Sure. Go
You
for
were
it.
saying about the buses, are they is it a specific bus that you have to get? Like, you're not just getting on the normal bus? Is it like a different
I
bus
said
route?
before, the normal buses are on a fixed route, and that would be great if there were sidewalks and curb cuts around the bus stops.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the big, like I said, that's the big glaring problem with Oklahoma City Metro, is they don't have sidewalks throughout the metro, is because of the way their system is set up, If you're a business, you have to request the sidewalk and the curb cut, and most businesses, to be completely honest, don't even know they have to do that. They just
So
assume
how?
it does it.
Sorry, I can't get this through my brain. How do people go shopping? Do you like drive to each shop?
Yeah, actually, it's really and by the way, this is not just for disabled, but able-bodied people have this problem too, that use the bus system. They moved to Oklahoma, and then they realize they have to buy a car, because if they come from somewhere as, close as even Austin. I've had friends that moved from Austin to Oklahoma City, and all of a sudden, for the first time in their life, they have to buy a car because they can't get anywhere to go shopping or go to work. They actually have to buy a car, and they're just like, what the?
So
Yeah.
you literally have to drive between each individual place and park up and then go in, and you can't just walk door to door.
Yeah.
Every time I forget how much of a capitalist hellscape America is.
I was actually kind of say I live in Maryland, so I was pleasantly surprised to know that we're the one state yes, we're not awful people who underpay the disabled.
And like I said, that is only for nonprofits.
Yeah.
If it's standard business, they have to pay, basic minimum wage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think also in Maryland we have a lot of nonprofits because of our we're so close to DC. So there's a lot of places that are like national organizations that are nonprofits. So that's nice.
Probably why the state decided to abolish that. Put a thing in to prohibit that. Is there no?
Anyone else have any other questions?
One, I'd like to say thank you again for volunteering to share with us about this. I can't speak for everyone, but I've never been very good at Googling anything. I always end up finding everything except what I'm actually looking for.
Oh, yes.
But I was wondering if you had any suggestions on, but how would you suggest we become more proactive in correcting these issues that you have brought to our attentions in our own state?
Mainly education, and I will say the people that are willing to, learn, that are willing to listen, will be the ones that'll be your biggest advocates. But I will say here and now, and I'm just going to say this as my personal opinion, how everybody's been shocked by America's recent behavior during the pandemic. I can honestly say I'm not that surprised, because the same individuals that are misbehaving currently now with what's going on with the pandemic are the same individuals that would come up to like myself or my husband while we were out in public and say the most horrendous, vile things. So yes, you just have to be able to find the people that would be willing to listen and learn, because most of the time people don't know. At least that's what I've realized, is they have no idea until it actually is relevant to them. But unfortunately, you will find people that, irregardless, won't care either way. Just so you know. You just gotta find the right people that are willing to listen and willing to, do something about it. And that's the big point. I would start out with maybe start out with state representatives. If you have a state representative, a congressman, or a senator that might be willing to listen, I would start with them, or even start at the local level, like at your city or your city level, like go to a city council meeting, if the state capitol opens it up for the public one session, do that. But like I said, they would just have to be willing to listen and be willing to do something about it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Gotta get involved in local stuff.
Yeah, get involved with local stuff. maybe talk to state representatives and even senators and congressmen if you think they'd be willing to listen. That's all I can say.
My hometown does an event every year called the Accessathon. And if Oklahoma City has ever considered anything like that.
Unfortunately, no, because how can I put we have a lot of our main issue is we have a lot of conservative religious individuals who they don't like thinking outside of their own bubble, so to speak. So it wouldn't really occur to them that this would be a thing. And unfortunately, they are the majority in our state as far as people that are in city council and local and state and federal level when they represent Oklahoma. So no, they probably wouldn't think of this on their own. That being said, there are advocacy groups that do stuff and organize stuff, but as of now, we don't organize anything because of the pandemic.
I volunteered with the Accessathon one year, and it really opened my eyes because I thought the town wasn't too bad. Like, there were definitely places that you can't go if you're in a wheelchair or have any sort of mobility aid. But overall, it's like, it's okay. And then you're going around with, like, the mayor who's in a wheelchair for the day to, like, test things out.
Oh, yeah.
And just like, wow. Like, you can't.
Yes. I'm pretty sure if we gave our governor that challenge, he would probably be, I'm hoping he would be shocked and appalled by how inaccessible our state really is. Now, there are pockets where it's better than others. Like Edmond, for example, is wonderful, but that's because they have several individuals that are disabled that sit on the city council. Same thing with Lawton. Lawton's the same way. They have several disabled individuals that sit on city council. So they bring up these issues. But Oklahoma City Metro as a whole doesn't really understand.
Emma says this is why representation matters, and that's absolutely true.
Right. But unfortunately in the US, as we're seeing, politics is mainly a popularity contest. And so if you don't fit their mold of what they think is popular, yeah, it's not happening.
It's interesting, like that you brought up the housing thing, because it's one thing that I probably hadn't thought of much in my life until my mother was in an accident, was in a wheelchair for 4 months, and her and I mean she broke her ankle and had to it was like not catastrophic, but it was a huge lifestyle change for her because my parents live in a townhouse, and she had to like get up the stairs, and we would like bring her down to the first floor, but then she'd be stuck on the first floor all day, and the bathroom on the first floor was teeny tiny, so someone had to help her on and off. I mean, it was just like you said before about how a lot of people like don't think about it until it affects them, and that was definitely again, it was like a temporary situation, but it was just like, well, like if you live in a wheelchair, you couldn't live in these houses because they're just completely inaccessible.
Oh yeah. I tell people the biggest hurdle for me is stairs and doors, because you don't think about it until you're just like, hi, and then everybody's like, oh crap, how are you going to get in? I'm not. Oh yeah, I've had an instance, an anecdote, if you'll humor me. We were apartment hunting. Gotta love this. We were apartment hunting, and we went to one apartment that was in our price range and said, hey, do you have any wheelchair accessible apartments? They were like, sure, yes, we have several available. You can, schedule a time this afternoon to come see them. And we, showed up, and all of a sudden the manager was leading us to a stairwell, and I'm like, where are we going? And she goes, oh, they're all up on the 3rd floor. I'm like, okay, and it's one of these apartment buildings that there's no interior. It's all one of those. They're all outside style apartments, so there's no it's not encased in a building. So I looked at her and went, excuse me, how am I supposed to get to the apartment? They go, oh, well, just get up and walk up the stairs and take your wheelchair with you. And I went, no, that's not gonna happen. This is not for show. I legitimately cannot walk.
Do they think it's a stroller and you can just pick up your child and pick up your wife, carry her up 3 flights of stairs?
Well, I will say this: I have actually seen people fake being disabled I wouldn't even know the reasoning why, because I've been disabled since birth. I wouldn't have the first reason to know why somebody would fake this. But there have been instances where people have faked being disabled. Why, I have no idea, but that is a thing, unfortunately. And when people do that, it kind of, makes the assumption that, oh, everyone that has, a wheelchair or walker or, walks with a cane, they're obviously faking. I had that said to my face. It's like, no, not faking. This is real. Believe me.
I mean, there are a lot of disabilities where you're in a chair sometimes, and sometimes you're not. Like one of my friends.
I mean,
But even so, 3 flights of stairs, nah.
no. Even if I was not in a chair and I was in my walker, the stairs are not happening.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the logic of, even if you could walk, but you need a chair, the idea that you would be able to carry a chair up 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's all the spoons for the day, just gone. just out them, just dropping them each step.
Yes.
You get in that apartment and then you'd never leave.
Yes, and heaven forbid if something were to happen, because I live in Tornado Alley. I don't know if you know what that means, but we are very prone to having massive tornadoes and thunderstorms that are very violent and very destructive. So being disabled and being on the top floor of any building is ill-advised. Is there any other questions, comments?
I would say concerns, except for all of them.
I know, it's really concerning when I basically blow the lid off of 30 Little Secrets. And by the way, my husband's in the room. If you want to ask him a question, he's willing to answer too.
Hi, Robert.
Hello.
Hi, Robert.
If anyone has any questions for me on how I handle with her disabilities and such, I can answer questions as well.
I guess it's a question for both of you. Is there something you usually anticipate Alyssa needing help with? Or is there something that she said, I always need help with this, just help me with it? Or do you still like to be asked every time, Alyssa?
Well, actually right now it's kind of a moot point, because as of a week ago,
Yeah.
the motors on my electric chair, on my motorized chair went out. So he literally has to do everything for me right now, whether I have a say in it or not, because I can't go anywhere.
Yeah, she needs to go to the bathroom. I have to help her. Usually before we go to bed, I'll help her into the bathroom, because we have a bathroom that's in our bedroom, and she can't get her chair in there, so I have to walk her into the bathroom to help her.
Yeah. And that's another thing. If you're house hunting, you kind of have to compromise, because you're not gonna find.
You'll never find the perfect house that fits perfectly, or even apartment. There's always going to be something that's going to be, well, you always got to kind of compromise when it comes to house hunting, because sometimes there might be, you know, well, a closet's 12-inch wide door, so, well, she's not going to be able to get into the closet to get her clothes or something like that. So I would have to get her clothes. Yeah, that's what I usually do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's always that. I usually pick clothes unless she's wants something specific, then she tells me. But most of the time it's, yeah, helping her to the bathroom before going to bed, because by that time she's kind of tired and she won't be able to do everything.
Yeah, I have a problem called sundowning, where as the sun goes down, my disability kind of kicks into overdrive. And so, yeah.
Honestly, Alyssa, Robert, too, thank you so much for doing this. This has been awesome. And thank you, everybody, for coming. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been great fun
This has
and
been
very informative.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thanks. And if you guys want links to anything, let me know. I will gladly, send them to you.